All right. So, welcome everybody to our first inaugural design Google Hangout meeting for Backdrop CMS. Backdrop is going to take design fairly seriously, and so we're going to start meeting weekly or what's it called when you fortnightly, once every 2 weeks to talk about design issues related to the project. So this is design not only related to the product that we're creating, but kind of bigger picture related to our brand and everything around Backdrop too. So for starters, we're going to go over all of the things that we're working on kind of big picture, and then also talk about all of the little tasks that we need to have done so that if there are any designers who are watching this video now or later and want to get involved in Backdrop, you can see where we need help and where it might be a good place for you to jump in. Backdrop, for those of you who don't know, is a content management system that's engineered specifically for small to medium-sized businesses, nonprofits, or groups that have concerns about budget but really want to deliver a full-featured website. So our primary target audience right now are people who are currently running Drupal 6 and Drupal 7 websites and are worried about the cost of moving those sites to Drupal 8. So we're building a system that is a fork of Drupal 7, and it's going to be easy and affordable, or easier and more affordable, to move to Backdrop than it would be to move your Drupal 7 site to Drupal 8. Longer term, we're going to try and also move this product in squarely into the space of WordPress users and groups like Squarespace and Wix and other easy site building tools. So it's super important for us to be focused on design and usability, because those two factors are super important to that particular audience too. So even though short term our focus is on capturing the Drupal user base, we need to think about solving problems that traditionally haven't been solved in the Drupal cycle. And I think they're also very important to Gautam, who's here today, to talk to us a little bit about human interface and what we should think about doing for Backdrop. So do you want to take it over from here?
Yeah, sure. So I have one presentation, so I'm not very familiar with how to present in HIG. I mean, within the Hangout. But let me try to present it via Hangout. Let me try it.
Sure. So I think if you can just change your screen to do a screen share, we should be able to see your slides, and then you should.
Yeah. Hello. Is it visible to everybody, or?
Okay, boy, been having some trouble. Okay, Gautam, I'm not seeing your screen yet. I'm still just seeing your face.
Oh, just a minute. Sorry.
There we go. All right, now we're seeing it.
So this is actually my proposal for towards the backdrop senior members to about HIG and human interface guideline proposal. So I'd like to just try to present basically the basic concepts of HIG. So what is HIG? Is a set of recommendation document targeted primarily for application developer and act as a medium for design guidelines. These guidelines mainly focus on helping three kind of personas: developers, power users, and the users from the design perspective. And the proposal towards HIG proposal for backdrop is basically the main TOC of for my presentations are basically idea, rationale, and why we need it. Basically, the draft TOC for that, and management proposals, and then obviously we can discuss.
Okay, that sounds good.
Okay, so that is why, rationale of why we need it. So developing a common language to avoid ambiguity for the interaction in backdrop, as well as within the community who are discussing discussing about backdrop and the usability and the user experience, as well as the human interface guideline, how we interact with backdrop, what should be the ideal way of interaction or micro interaction within the backdrop. So we need to develop a language, a common language, so everybody can understand what we are talking about. So that of the focus I believe is required, and that is why HIG is required as well. The next point is it will help to understand the importance of experience consistency. So if you, for all the software, all the developers who are in for the longer term, we are associated with the software development and developing softwares. So we all know the consistency matters for the end users as well as power users as well. So consistency is supreme to make a software successful for the end users as power users. So usability recommendations will also help users, power users, and all the personas I mentioned for backdrop developers. So, and these set of documents or recommendations will work as a guideline for UX user experience best practices and how backdrop implements it. So backdrops should be having its own vocabulary of user experience, which backdrop will be implementing. After it's researching. So what are the best options available and what are the best recommendation by all the softwares. So it's kind of a research work. So it will work as a recommendation. It will be, evolving. It's not that cast in stone. When we are done, it's never done actually, because we will be facing day-to-day user will be using it. So whether the persona is users, power users, or developers, so they will be coming with a problem solution. So which we will be backdrop will be deciding, and what will be the best solution for backdrop, and that will be the continuous process to improve our guideline for user experience best practices.
Okay.
And so these are the very basic draft TOC just for the slides, just to give you some brief idea of what I think. So the main elements of this draft TOC should, I think at this moment is like that. So what are the design thinking essentials? So because we are talking about HIG, human interface guidelines, so it obviously has a design perspective. So from how and what will be the guidelines? So how we should start? Like what are the essential elements when we talk about HIG or user interface or usability perspective, or maybe user experience? But whatever we say, but it has a design perspective. So we have to have an understanding or some kind of a documentations by which a person can understand the basic design. Whenever he thinks about design. And obviously there will be UX and UI patterns. So what I mentioned is basically how, what are the patterns or UX or UI patterns, backdrop things is the way to go, and backdrop implements this. And apart from that, there should be some other things which has a direct link to the style sheet, I believe, which is interface elements. So an interface elements is basically the part of this UX overall UX context, UX problem. Because UX is a problem. If we get a problem, then we should apply some proficient or recommended or best applied UX patterns. So how our UX, our interface element participate in these UX components or UI patterns. So that has to be linked. So interface elements are absolutely necessary. But as we have in backdrop, there is an issue I know that is called style sheet development for admin theme. So apart from that, we should have a base kind of a theme, which backdrop, what should I say, emphasize or backdrop endorsed interface elements. So what are the group of basic interface elements backdrop operates on? So this should be out there.
Yep, I think that sounds good.
Okay, thank you. And after all, I mean, for doing this, I think we need to have some kind of a plan how we should manage this overall initiative. So for that, I believe it's obvious for any kind of initiative that identifications of initiative owners or set of people who will drive. So I believe it will be good if we can have number of people so we can exchange our thoughts and we can have a better perspective on the initiative. And
okay.
I personally in favor of GitHub to manage these things, and I think that there are several way you are managing. What I suggested is backdrop ops / HIG, and to have a kind of all this document as a markup or HTML, simple HTML development, HTML, CSS, and JavaScript development, so everybody can contribute onto it. Very nominal web development skills are required for doing this. And for preview and publishing, it's obvious whenever we have a GitHub and we are putting HTML, JavaScript, and CSS, then maybe few people having issues how to see it. So for that, I think HTML preview.github.io is having a good program. So they maintain it for GitHub pages.
Is this something that can be incorporated into our style guide, or is this something that needs to be developed outside of the style guide until it's approved and then moved in after that?
So I think style guide, as I mentioned, so it can be developed separately as a separate initiative, because today itself I read one good article about if we componentize as much as possible, so it will be easier to manage in open source development world, from Gary Laurfield, I believe. I recall. So maybe smaller initiative is good, but as I mentioned earlier, so style guide is definitely should be a part of HIG as well. So how we manage it and how we put effort on the various components of the overall HIG. So it may take longer time and need larger number of collaboration and participation as well. So as we go forward, so I believe we can at any point of time, it's up to you and Nate maybe, and anybody else also can help to accumulate and incubate within the overall backdrop issue queues, or how you want to manage actually. Okay. But I think there are several things.
I think keeping it in backdrop ops is a good place. I think initially we should try and document as much as we can first, and then take a look at the documentation and say, okay, what does this look like in terms of code? Like, is it something we can do as part of the style guide, or should it be a separate project where we can test drive things individually? My hesitation to just creating an HIG project right off the bat is that it's another piece of code that we need to manage, and until we have enough people working on it, it seems like separating all of the efforts might not be the best path forward. But I think that once we have that document, it'll kind of become obvious, like, oh, there are things that we're working on that aren't part of the style guide yet, and we need a place to try them, and that it might become obvious that we need to have a separate place. I think long term, if we have a lot of people working on it that don't necessarily need to be involved in the style guide stuff, it makes sense to separate them. But let's see how it goes first and see if that's needed.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So that's it, I believe, for the HIG proposal. What I prepared for you to see.
Okay, cool. Let's see. Jen, can you turn your camera back on? Jen, are you still there?
I can hear your voice, but Janie's dropped, I believe.
Am I back?
Okay,
Oh,
there
yeah,
you are.
yeah, you are.
Hey. Sorry. Apparently my network connection is experiencing difficulties. Did I miss something there while I dropped out?
No, I just asked you to turn your camera back on.
Oh, I'm not sure our internet can handle my camera. Hello?
Yeah, you're still here.
Okay.
Okay, well let's just carry on then.
All right. So should I move on to design tasks?
Yeah, sure.
Hello?
Yeah, yes, you should.
Okay. Sorry, I'm like, I can't tell if my internet's dropped out again or not. All right. We've got a couple of things that we're working on. One of the things that I think is important to complete before we release Backdrop is getting our administration to feel different than Drupal's administration, so that when you're using the product, it doesn't feel like you're using Drupal. And part of that involved re-theming the administration. So we really like the 7 theme. We think it's really great, but we're looking for a couple of small significant changes that can really help separate the way it feels. So doing something like changing fonts everywhere is something that can make it feel really different from Drupal 7 without requiring a lot of work from us. But there is a lot of stuff, like you can't just change the fonts, you've got to then change the spacing of things and make sure that everything works out. So we've created a style guide to help us figure out what kind of changes we need to be making to make the administration feel a little bit different. And this is based on the process that Drupal 8 used. They created a style guide, came up with some consistent patterns that needed to be applied, and then applied them. We're going to do the same thing, but obviously we want to get different design patterns than Drupal 8 is using, so that it doesn't feel like you're using Drupal 8. We had Julia Vanderwyk, who's a great front-end developer, working on our style guide for a while, but she's gotten a little bit busy lately and doesn't have time to finish that up. So it would be good if we could have someone who had most importantly, design skills to look at the style guide that we have now, which is basically pulled directly out of Backdrop, and say, you know, these are the rules about how our administration theme feels. What can we change about them? Like, is there an easy way to just throw in a font and then adjust all the sizes, change the colors to match our branding, make some significant changes in that way to just kind of get the style guide looking the way we want. And if the person who needs to make those changes doesn't have HTML and CSS skills, that's perfectly fine. What we need is someone to just tell us design-wise what looks good. So it would be great if we could have someone with those skills to kind of take a look at the current style guide and make some recommendations. You can do that in Photoshop or I don't know, Sketch, whatever it is you're comfortable using, to just tell us what should be different in different places. And we can go ahead and start creating tickets against that to get those changes into both the style guide and into Backdrop. So we've got the style guide is its own project on GitHub. There is a GitHub IO page where you can just click to see what it looks like. So it'll be great when we start making these changes, we'll just push them right into that so people can view it directly on GitHub IO without having to look at the code. And then we'll go ahead and make pull requests against Backdrop, the product, based on the changes that went into that style guide, separate project. And then we've already established a different branding on Backdrop's installer, which is good, but we should probably revisit that page as well after our style guide is completed, so that if we've done something like change the fonts, we want to make sure that those fonts are also reflected on the installer. So hopefully the CSS will work in such a way that it'll carry over, but it would be good to review what happens when that carries over, just to make sure that we're still in line with what the style guide is telling us to do. So style guide needs a new owner. It needs someone to kind of say, I want to develop the branding for the admin theme, or what it feels like to use Backdrop, and help paint that picture for us. And then we're also going to need some help with actually implementing it. So if we have anyone who's watching this screencast later, and they're going, hey, I have design skills, how can I be of benefit? That is definitely the thing we need most urgently. We need someone to just tell us how to make it look better, feel better. Other things that we need is the backdropcms.org primary website. We're going to be working on getting a new design of that out, hopefully in conjunction with release of Backdrop 1.0.0. We have engaged with Anna from Giant Rabbit, who's done a bunch of great design with us stuff before. She's helping us develop the mascot, and we have already asked her if she would be open to helping us develop a theme for our site that incorporates the mascot but also includes some of our branding guidelines. So it would be good if we could kind of help establish the branding guidelines first and then hand those off, and she can mock something up really quick, which would be good. But if we have someone who's watching this who wants to own the brand of our primary website, we could definitely use help with that as well. So we have some people on hand, but if someone else really wants to do that, we are flexible with that as well. And then once we have the design done for our primary website, we do need someone who has the availability to theme it for us. Our primary website right now is very basic. All it is a homepage and a handbook. It should be pretty easy to apply whatever theme we need to it. Longer term, we have some more features that we would like to add. We want to add a place to browse module and themes. We want to add a showcase. We want to add a whole bunch of other stuff. But short term, all we really need is this first version of the theme. It just needs to be written in a way that later, when we add these other components, they'll fit in with the theme that's built now. So it doesn't need to encompass everything, but it needs to be flexible enough that we can add them easily later. So we need volunteer for that, and then we also are going to need to take the new theme that we developed for backdropcms.org and apply it to our API site. So there's some things about the way the API site, the way that it works, they're a little different from the way our primary site works. So probably what we'll do is just throw the primary theme on it and see what it looks like. And there's probably some parts that'll be a little messy and we'll need a little cleanup. So we're going to need someone to kind of take that part of the job too. So those are the
Hey guys.
Yeah, I think we lost Jay.
Okay, I thought so too. Man, we're having a terrible time. Google's really failing us today. So, do you know where she left off? We've got the agenda document. I'm not really sure where we lost her.
Yes, I think we lost just before mascot.
Okay.
API.
Okay.
We were at API. API.backdrop.
Okay. Yeah, so continuing our list of design related tasks, we're also working on building out a new mascot for. So Backdrop, we have the logo right now, which is the square with the corner peeled up, which I'm sure I could pull up a copy of somewhere. But the thing about the logo is that the logo is great for representing the overall brand, but it's not really great for doing things like being playful and something that you can really associate or affiliate with. So it's kind of similar to like how Drupal has the Drupal logo that is just literally the word Drupal, TM. But then they also have the Drupal-icon, and Drupal-icon is essentially like the mascot of Drupal that you can feel free to manipulate and modify and use it for camps and change it however you want. So we're doing the same sort of thing, and the mascot that we're working on right now is a dragon. His name is Drop, so his name is Dragon Drop. And
it's a cute one.
Yeah, and I don't think that we've published anything publicly yet about the dragon, but he's actually really pretty cute. We're working with the illustrator to kind of figure that out directly with him to kind of eliminate the amount of, like you don't want to overwhelm with too much feedback because then you end up with something that nobody's really happy with. So we're working with the illustrator directly on that, and I think that he should be done with that really pretty soon now.
That's great.
Let's see. Other things, swag that we can distribute at camps and conferences related to Backdrop. We've already got a bunch of stickers. We've got square ones and we've got horizontal ones that we're happy to distribute. But, I mean, long-term, well, not even long-term, short-term, do we want more swag? Like something beyond stickers. And so I'm not really sure what kind of budget we can rustle up for this. We've still got several $1,000s from our Indiegogo campaign that we could potentially put towards ending efforts. But whether or not like swag is the best way to, go about marketing or not is hard to say. So we can consider if we want to do, any additional swag at any time. But if something comes up and it looks awesome, we'll probably find a way to make it happen.
That's great. That's great.
Okay.
One swag about mascot, what is underway at the moment, I think that is also you can think of. So because you can associate it very quickly, because if you have a mascot and if you have a different kind of swag, I don't know. Yeah.
So I kind of want to share with the mascot, but I think that we should wait on that until we finally have it completed. But yeah, I totally agree that once the mascot is completed, then that will facilitate the creation of swag for sure.
Hey, sorry guys.
Hey Jen, you're back.
I'm back. I think.
We just finished up with the list. We just talked about the mascot and swag, so we've gone through the total list now. Hey, your video's even back.
Yeah, I'm going to try it. I seem to have better internet right now, but we'll see how long that lasts. That's great. Yeah, so we're super excited about the dragon. Yay, he's coming soon. And then swag will come once we have a dragon. But yeah, okay, so that's kind of the end of the short list of things that I have that have design-related tasks. There's obviously a bunch of issues in the Backdrop GitHub queue that also are relating to design, and thanks to Gautam's suggestion, we did go ahead and create a tag there for audience design, so that if you're a designer and you want to see issues there that relate to you, look for that tag, and as we create new issues, we'll try and mark them, tag them with design, if that seems relevant, so that people can find those in the future. There's a whole bunch that I haven't gone through. There were just a handful of ones that I knew were related to design, so I went and tagged those first ones. So it could be that if you're looking through the issue queue, you could find an issue that's related to the design and doesn't have a tag on it. Anyone who's working in the issue queue should have access to edit those tags as long as they've created a pull request. If you've not yet created a pull request, you can ask permission from Nate or myself to give you access to that. We will eventually build some kind of button or some like self-allowing tool that'll help that happen more quickly, but that's also on our to-do list of things we need to do with the GitHub API, so it's not quite done yet. But yeah, so hopefully this meeting and some of our new high-level initiatives, like setting up brand guidelines and human interface guidelines, will start to make Backdrop seem like a more appealing place for designers to get involved. We know the Drupal community historically has been really hard to get designers involved. Just the process is very developer-focused. And I'm super happy that we're thinking about this now in Backdrop land, because we definitely have a shortage of design talent in Drupal, and I would really love to change that, the way that Backdrop works. So thank you so much for suggesting this meetup, Gautam, and helping us get on the right track with setting these things early.
Thank you. Thank you for your time as well. So it's my I see for me to, it will be great for me if I can really contribute in a meaningful way for Backdrop.
I think you already have, so
And
I've got big hopes for the future. So for the rest of this meeting, I had a couple of items on the agenda. Number one, if we wanted to add anything else to this weekly agenda, I know this is our first meeting, so I just kind of guessed at what we should talk about. But if there are other things that we should talk about every week, like should we involve some of the issues in the Backdrop issue queue on this agenda, like these are the things that are most important. That I know we've got the admin style guide stuff on there just because that was the thing that I felt was not necessarily related to the Backdrop project in terms of its issue queue, but super important for Backdrop the project. But if there were a couple of things there that were like, we need designer consensus on making a decision, like which icon font to choose, I picked my favorite and put it in that issue queue, but maybe we should involve the larger design community in decisions like that. Stuff like that can definitely be added to this agenda, or anything else that comes up that isn't the list today. We should feel the ability to add it at any time. So I did want to make sure you didn't have any thoughts on that now, and that every week we can kind of re-evaluate what's on the agenda and adjust as needed.
yeah, sure. So it will be. I have few observations regarding this agenda. I mean, what I faced. I would like to just to share with you. So think about it. So one is, I mean, these are the agendas what you have mentioned here. I mean, it is very handy for me to understand what is going on the design space and what are the needs. But it is really very difficult for me, and what I faced is so just to understand this thing from the Backdrop issue. So
Okay.
maybe few things are missing out there, or maybe we really I missed out. I don't know. But I think that should be super helpful for the new contributors who are really interested for the Backdrop design initiatives. So it will be great if we can have these things in some way, some form in Backdrop issue.
So does that mean you want, should we put a link in this document to the sorted issues in the Backdrop 2 that contain the tag, so that anyone who's looking at this document can see the exact list of stuff? Okay, so that's one thing we should add. I can do that too. Link.
Yeah,
And then
I also think that the inverse of that is probably the biggest problem, that when you land in the GitHub issue queue,
you want
it's difficult. Yeah, it's difficult to tell what the list of tasks is, because it's like there's the issues, sure, but GitHub is so flat in its organization that every issue is given equal weight that it's hard to tell, like this is the overall list. Maybe we should use the overall README markdown file in some of these repositories to outline what they do. Yeah, like right now we've got the style guide repository, for example, but the style guide repository doesn't actually say. I mean, it kind of has a little bit. It's like here's how you view it, but it doesn't actually say here's how to here's how to get involved with working on it.
Okay.
Or maybe, I don't know, maybe in contribution of Backdrop CMS.org, if we can highlight anyway for the designer space where they can contribute. I mean, that is there, but if we can anyway highlight or emphasize something, I mean, there are a lot to do. How to do. Because I got there, and I got, if you are interested in kind of a print and swag and marketing material, then you can email. But it's not the same like developers. If you are a developer, you can do this and that, and there is a clear crystal link. But for designers, it will be difficult. I mean, makes sense. I
Okay.
don't know.
Yeah. So 2 places to update. I'm just going to make notes too. So the README files for each project and the backdrop CMS.org primary website in the Getting Involved section. So let's see. Contributing. Yeah, we don't have anything in under developer guide for design at all.
Right.
It's all code, documentation.
Right, that's because that's the code page. I mean, it's literally like the contributing code page. I mean, we don't have a contributing
No, I
design
mean,
page.
like so not even on the contributing code page, but in the developer guide. It's PHP code, CSS code, JavaScript, contributing code, pull requests. Like there's nothing under
Yes.
developer guide that makes you think we have designers.
Yes.
Right, right. Well, although
I mean, we don't right now, but it would be good to, if we want designers, we should maybe do something about that.
right. I would say that we
Yes.
should put it under developer guide.
Exactly
though.
what I felt.
Yeah, we should have a whole new category for designing or designer guide. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't make any sense. Like, of course, we don't have design stuff under the developer section.
Okay. So should we create a I don't know how to do that. Okay, I'll just make a note to figure that out, and then maybe at our next meeting, we can talk about different ideas about how to solve that. Like if we should create like a designing guide section. We should do a contributing to something else. Yeah, there's a couple of ways we can handle that. But we should definitely put something on our primary website that also leads to the fact that we have these things. Another thing, too, is once we have the human interface guidelines and the brand guidelines, we're going to need to find a home for them as well. I think the brand guidelines can definitely go under the About Backdrop section. We already have this page, logo name and press kit, which is kind of like the closest thing we have to brand guidelines right now. I think it would be good to get like our fonts and color scheme and everything on that and rename it something like brand guidelines and press kit, or I don't know, people are going to be looking for press kit. And then user interface guidelines should probably go in the developer guide section or whatever we call that, so that people who are developing stuff for Backdrop have a permanent resource that's like, oh, I need to build an interface. What should it do? And right now, the way that Drupal works, there's kind of no rules, and every developer will choose to build their interfaces however they want to do it. So I think having some standards that's like, this is how Backdrop does it, are going to be good, not only to make sure that we get that consistency in core, which isn't there right now, but also so that all of Contrib developers have something to follow, so that it'll start to feel a lot better all the way throughout. So I think that will be super useful too, and finding somewhere to put it in here would also be good. One thing we do need to be conscious of, though, is that we wanted our handbook for the Backdrop primary website you can read all of in one sitting. Choosy about which things end up in the handbook, like what are the most important things that we need to add and where do we add them. I think these two things are important and we should find a way to incorporate them, but just long term, this is a slippery slope where every time we find something missing, we add it to the handbook, we're going to end up like Drupal. So that's just something to keep in mind. Okay, so I've got 3 things to do. I added the link to the agenda already to all of the design-related issues for Backdrop the product in the GitHub queue. We also should update the README file so that if anyone lands on any of the issue queues for any of the projects we're working on, whether it's the style guide or Backdrop itself or anything else, there's a link there to tell people how to actually use the issue queue or give people a link to a way to browse stuff. And we should also find a way to put this stuff on the website to make designers feel more welcome there too. So I'll come up with a proposal about what to do about the website. Nate, do you think you could take a stab at the README files? Do you have an idea about that?
Yeah, we can at least, well, it's funny because we need places to link to, and right now we don't really have anything. The only thing we've really got is in the handbook, there's the ways to contribute. There's like a little bullet list, but even then it's like, yeah, like Gautam is right that like there's no way to actually get involved here other than sending us an email, and that's a really terrible bottleneck.
Yeah.
I mean,
Okay.
they have to email us before we tell.
Okay, maybe I can take a stab at this too. Um, I'll go ahead and do a first pass at the backdrop issue tracker README. You're right, that little bullet list is not useful. I think I wrote that first one up where I was like, we need something here, and then I added like one sentence. It's not good. Okay, and then Gautam, could we get you to start working on human interface guidelines document?
Yeah, definitely. I will start working on it. And shall I start on my own public repo and share the repo with you guys when I think it is demonstrable and you can at least have a comment on this something, or
Sure,
you have a
that
better
would be
option?
great.
Just let me know and I'll. Okay, that's great. Okay, I'll just start working on that and I will share the link with you guys.
That would be amazing.
And I will also try to contribute. I will also try to contribute as much as possible in the design issues. But I am having few, maybe some questions or something, but I am not very sure as well. So where to put my questions? So is the IRC the right way? I mean, as you have as it is mentioned in the site itself.
Yeah, so that's a good question. We haven't established like the proper place to ask questions in terms of, Drupal.org says ask questions in the issue queue. We originally said questions should be asked on Stack Exchange, but then we had a bunch of problems with the Stack Exchange solution, and so now we haven't really decided where those go yet. I think if you have an urgent question, Nate and I are almost always on the IRC, and you can definitely ask us in there. We will try and figure out where we should put questions for the backdrop project, like we were talking about setting up another issue queue, or if that was too developer focused, to try and find a better solution somewhere else. Right. So issue queue is good. If your question is about a specific issue, like you're on a design issue and you have a question, if you ask it there, Nate and I both get emails if you mention us. So if you say, oh, hey, I have a question for, at QuickSketch, he'll get an email that'll let him know that you asked a question in that queue. If you do the same thing with me, I'll get an email. So short term, until we have hundreds of them.
So, but it can pollute your backdrop issue queue as well. So anyway, otherwise I was just thinking about if we can have
all of those questions.
Yeah.
I didn't hear that. Can you say that again?
Yeah. So what I was thinking, just as that if we can have at this moment, if you can have a shared Google spreadsheet among the designers to have this, so that we can raise, at least share, so that we can raise for our question, concerns, and something, so that we can. It can be one option, maybe. I'm not very sure how comfortable you are having this kind of thing. But maybe.
Yeah, I think so. So long term, I think a Google spreadsheet is not the right solution, because I feel like Google spreadsheets are where things go to die. No one can ever find the spreadsheet. But I think short term, because we don't have another option, that might be a good place for you to put your questions, and when you have designers to bounce ideas off of, to show them the spreadsheet. And when we figure out where this place is that people can ask questions, it needs to be somewhere that's Googleable, so that you can put in, how do I do X with backdrop, and it'll come up. It would be good to have this list of questions or discussion or whatever it is you have in the spreadsheet to put into that system, so that any conversation that you have been having can be made public. I need to go and reread that issue and see what people have said since last week about where we should have conversations. But I think even if it's a GitHub queue, that is something that we can Google and get those answers later, and that might be a better starting place than a spreadsheet. So let me look at that today. I'll start with that issue after this next meeting is over, and see if we can get a good starting place. And then if we don't have an answer yet, then I would say if you have questions, immediately throw them in the spreadsheet just for your own note-taking purposes, if nothing else, so you don't lose them.
Okay. Great.
All right. So is there anything else we should talk about today? We've got kind of a general discussion section, and we've had pretty good discussion so far, but...
Yes, more or less we are done. I have just last one question. Let me.
Okay.
I mean, this is the color scheme mentioned in the document. So, is it kind of a final color scheme that you have already decided for the admin theme to be changed to?
It is a general guide. It is not in any way final, but we don't have a theme yet for our website, and the amount of which colors used and exactly what those colors are will need to change based on, you know, the context in which they're being used. So we had someone help us with our logo and brand initially, but we haven't built anything with it. So we asked him for a color palette, and this is the color palette he delivered, but he said, you know, you might need to adjust it depending on what you're doing. So it's a guide, not set in stone. So if you need to, like, we needed to do something like put a error message on the website, it needed to be red, and that was not a color that worked, we can change it. That's fine.
But thank you.
Yeah, I also want to add that the color palette is intended to be the color palette for the backdrop brand. That is like the colors that we would use on our own website, but it's not necessarily the color palette of backdrop the software. So what the administration theme uses is completely up in the air at this point. Like we don't have any established rules around colors for the administration theme. We could, you know, have a fair amount of cohesiveness between the administration theme and the backdrop CMS website, but that's not a requirement. Like I think it would be good to have some continuity and make them feel like they're related, but we don't want them to end up being the same thing.
Right. We had a horrible problem when Drupal's website was running the same theme as Drupal the product, and people got confused as to whether they were on their own website or on Drupal's website. So we don't want it to look exactly the same. We've tried that; it didn't work. But having some you know, familiarity to be like, oh, backdrop the website feels like backdrop the software, that's fine. But the colors don't need to match exactly. The fonts don't need to be the same. So just this is our brand, not our product's brand necessarily.
No, it's okay. And I would like to I don't know, I mean, maybe I'm taking too much of time. Anyway, so quickly, so I had long-term idea about, I didn't have this question answered for the long time because I was using Drupal from 4.5. So why Drupal, Drupal, out of the box Drupal theme, front-end theme, is never actually kind of usable.
No.
So how do you think about it? Because Drupal, for backdrop, maybe we should think about, something should be come out of the backdrop, so which is actually usable out of the box.
Yes,
so kind of a thing. Not only admin.
I would love if we could put a new front-end theme that people would use in the software. We just have enough stuff that we're working on before the 1.0.0 release that it hasn't been a priority. But a new theme is something that we can add like during the release cycle. That's not going to break any APIs. That's something that we can put in later. So if you are passionate about, you know, why does the default theme that comes out of Backdrop suck so much? I mean, it was a good theme in its time, but you know, every Backdrop website should not look like the same thing. Replacing it with something that is usable, it would be really valuable. And I think that if you are passionate about that and you wanted to make it happen, that can go in Backdrop 1.1. It can go in 1.2. Whenever we have it, if we like it, we can put it in. So I think it's not necessarily a priority, but it is something that I think it would be amazing to get done. So yes,
okay. Thanks.
Good idea. We're all in favor. We just don't have enough hands to do all the typing.
Yeah.
Or minds to do all the design stuff because we don't have designers. But we will now. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and wrap up because we're going to start the next meeting. And then longer term, we'll have this meeting again in 2 weeks, but we'll start to see, depending on how many people join each meeting, if it might make more sense to merge the two together. Our other meeting usually only takes half an hour. So if this meeting can take half an hour, it might be good to just move the starting time up to 12 noon Pacific and have half an hour for design followed by half an hour for status update, and just do it all together so we don't have to manage two different meeting invites and two different agendas. But 2 weeks from now, we'll have another one of these meetings alone at 12, and we'll see how it goes. We'll see the and engage from there. Am I frozen or are you frozen? Hello?
Okay, sorry. My computer had locked up a little bit there.
I think mine did too.
Okay. All right, let's call it a meeting. Man, I'm getting irate here with these technical problems.
All right. Well, thank you for joining GoTim, and thank you for all your wonderful suggestions so far.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
All right,
Bye.
guys. We'll meet up again soon. Thank you very much.
Yes.